Yes, I nearly didn't come because I thought for a moment, when a Queen Sween suddenly appeared on your friends in your Skype, I thought, honey trap. GCHQ are going to set me up. And I thought, no, lady, delete. And then I got a note from Alan from Bolton saying, oh, there's a lady trying to contact you about coming tonight, etc., Albion. And I went back and well, we had a lovely chat on the phone, and
Here you are.
here I am, and thank you very much. And I'm conscious my time is running out, so let's get started. I'm first of all going to start with the very good news, in my humble opinion. And that is, I believe that our mindset, and I'll come on to that in a minute, is going to win out within 3 years. I work for a newspaper. I talk to hundreds of people a week. They're all sick to death of the bankers. They're all sick to death of politicians. They have had enough. And they don't really want to take part in the democratic system any longer. They really are that cheesed off. And I talk to business people. I talk to a complete cross-section. And they've all had enough of the banks and the politicians and the lies. So we are pushing against an open door. And I believe that our mindset, and what I mean by our mindset is our love of common law, our love of common humanity, and our love, basically, of common sense. Because what we're trying to do is not rocket science, it's just how human beings should interact with one another in peace, and most above all else, to be happy. When was the last time you heard a politician say, I want to make you happy? Cameron wants to monitor your happiness. He wants to monitor how happy you are. But do they actually want to make you happy? Of course not, because their puppeteers, the bankers, say, no, 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 they must not be happy. They have got to be corporate slaves. Now, I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey to find the Bradbury. And I apologise now for names dropping. I can't help it, but I was very nearly recruited back in 1982 to work for the other side. And I'll tell you a quick story. My late uncle was Sir Harry, later Lord Pilkington. He was an uncle by marriage. He married my mother's sister. He was a lovely man to the family and all the people in St Helens, but there was another side to him. He went to the very first Bilderberg conference in 1954. In 1955 to 1972, he was a director of the Bank of England. One of his mates was a guy called Aurelio Peccei. Aurelio Peccei was one of the top men in Fiat, and unbeknown to me, because I'd shown an interest in green politics and I was in the Ecology Party, started off and all the rest of it, my uncle got me to meet Aurelio Peccei at a conference in London. It was actually during the Falklands War, I remember it well. And I had lunch with him and Thor Heyerdahl, the explorer. And unknown to me, they were offering me a job, because by the time they finished talking and everything else, he said, how would you like to come to work in Rome as a researcher and you know, to help me in the Club of Rome, because he just started an organisation called the Club of Rome in the 1970s. And he went on to tell me, what we are here to do is to frighten the world into accepting global governance, because there are huge environmental problems out there. And he started in 1982 to talk about CO2. He started by saying the world is going through natural climate change. But we know that we can use that to frighten people into accepting global governance for the world's ecology and everything else. He painted it in a picture that I was gullible enough to believe, because I was an ecologist and I was worried about the ecosystems and everything else. And what he was telling me, I trusted him. And he offered me this job to go and work in Rome. And it was just by sheer luck. I had a new girlfriend at the time, and I was in the Territorial Army, and I'd just been made up to another rank, captain or something. And basically, I thought life is pretty good where I am, so I turned him down. To this day, I wonder what on earth would have happened had I accepted that position. I might not be addressing you tonight, Adam, because one of the things he said was, we open all sorts of doors for you. So I'm just grateful that I gave that word and I didn't accept it. But I didn't, as I said, I thought it was something, you know, worthy, you know, something worthy for the planet. Moving on very quickly to September 2012, and this is how the Bradbury came about, I suddenly got a phone call one evening. And the conversation went something like this. I said, hello. And a very posh home counties voice said, oh, hello, is that Justin Walker? Now, of course, when somebody says that to you and you don't know who they are, you go, well, it might be. And he said, well, is that Justin Walker, the nephew of the late Sir Harry, late Lord Pilkington? I said, well, yes, it is. Ah, he said, excellent. He said, I'm ringing on behalf of my father who worked at the Bank of England with your uncle. And I said, right. And he said, yes, my father is very ancient and he's probably not going to be long with us, but he wants to tell you a word. He wants to give you a word. And by this time I was scrambling. My computer was switched off, my laptop was shut. I had no piece of paper or pen by the phone and I was panicking. I thought, oh my God. He said, yes, the word is Bradbury. I went, right, Bradbury, thank you very much. And I even blew on the window and wrote it down. I had nothing to write. He was saying. So he said, look, I'm sorry, we can't talk any longer. You won't be able to contact who I am or anything. But my father had read your article on the greenback dollar, greenback pound, because I'd written an article for the UK column, basically saying what was good for Abraham Lincoln with the greenback dollar, that is, issuing money based on the wealth of the nation. Why can't we have a greenback pound in this country? And that had been printed in the UK column. And apparently his father had seen that, and he located me, and he said, right, look up the Bradbury. And with that, he said, goodbye. I did 1471, number withheld. So the Bradbury. So the first one I looked up, I found Martian Chronicles. Then I discovered, what was it? Oh yes, that lady who runs around on tracks. She's a rather good-looking brunette, Julia Bradbury or something. Does that ring a bell? No, right, okay. And I'll move on quickly. And then eventually I found something about a Bradbury treasury note. I still didn't understand really what was going on. And then I came across a very interesting, honest politician called Thomas Johnston. And he is the father of the Scottish hydroelectric. He was a Scottish Labour MP, and he is often seen as the father of the Scottish hydroelectricity schemes up in Scotland and the Highlands. And he wrote a book about the financiers and the nation, and how basically they had been ripping off the people of this country for hundreds of years. And when I read that, then I worked out the Bradbury Pound. And so anyway, the story of the Bradbury is as follows. How many people have heard of the Bradbury Pound and actually... So I'm almost telling... Well, there's a few people, so I'll just say very quickly what the Bradbury Pound is. At the outbreak of the First World War in August 1914, centenary next year, the government, obviously the war was being declared and everything else, the bankers suddenly realised they were going to have a run on the banks because people are uneasy about, obviously, war. It was the gold standard in those days, so people felt, obviously, they wanted to get the gold out of the banks, put it under the mattress or wherever, in secure times. You don't know how things are going to go. And according to Thomas Johnston, there was only £9 million worth of gold in the Bank of England, the central bank for the central banks. So the central banks for the high street banks. So they went running off to see David Lloyd George, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and they said, right, we've got to do something about this. And it was a bank holiday. So immediately they extended the bank holiday by 3 days. They passed a bill through Parliament, a currency bill, to authorise the Treasury to issue money, paper money, based on nothing more than the credit of the nation. That's it. It wasn't involving gold, it wasn't anything like that. It was simply a bill to pass, to enable the Treasury, not the Bank of England, the Treasury, to issue debt-free and interest-free money based on the credit of the nation. And within, well, I think it was August the 7th, 1914, when people went to the banks, when they were finally open, they were given these pieces of paper, which were actually notes originally made on stamp paper, only printed on one side. I think the black ones were £1, the 10 bob notes were the red ones. And because they were basically introduced to the public as this is from the government, they accepted it. And the Bradbury notes immediately became a smash hit. In fact, in 1914, £200 million worth of these notes were issued. And all they were notes, money, to be used as units of exchange, because what's the definition of money? Money is a convenient unit of exchange for goods and services that people have complete confidence in. And the people had complete confidence. And they were called the Bradbury because John Bradbury was the secretary to the Treasury, and his name went on these notes. Now, as soon as this happened, basically the war was being paid for by debt-free money. And the bankers suddenly realised, hang on a moment, how are we going to make money out of this war? oh dear, we've dropped a bit of a clanger. It's stopped the run on the banks, but we've now got to reverse this. So they went running back to David Lloyd George and said, you've got to stop this now, because we can't make any money out of it. We've got to go back to the old, you know, the Treasury issuing bonds, and the bankers will buy the bonds and we will give you the money, created out of thin air, of course, and then we will charge you 3.5%, 4.5% interest and so forth. And so Lloyd George, and this is the intriguing part, why did Lloyd George cave in so quickly and easily? From one moment, basically Britain was fighting the war using debt-free, interest-free money, and the next moment agreeing to go back to the status quo, whereby we borrow money from the banks who have created it out of thin air and then charge interest on that nothingness. It's insane, it's immoral, it's usury, etc., etc. But David Lloyd George caved in immediately, and we went back. And as a result, the national debt in 1914, and I'm plugging my figures here, was 650 million pounds, a national debt. At the end of the war, at the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, the debt had gone up to something like 1,700 million pounds. So the bankers made a killing from the killing fields of Flanders. Now, I wrote something, and it's done the round, and it's an e-book that a dear friend of mine did for me. I wrote it, it's called Bankers, Bradburys and the Carnage on the Western Front. And it's an e-book that you can download free of charge from the UK column. If you go to the UK column, you'll see the Bradbury campaign, the lovely symbol that we've had made to represent the campaign. And the campaign is going to kick in very big come January of this coming year, because obviously that's the centenary year. And we will be going flat out to let people know about the Bradbury. We've already alerted the politicians. Austin Mitchell has done an early day motion calling for basically the restoration of the Bradbury Pound. He's backed by 3 MPs, so we have got to start. We've got a foot in the door. We know we've got an uphill struggle. We sent a writ of mandamus to Cameron and Osborne demanding the return of the Bradbury Pound, but of course we were totally ignored. The politicians have no answer to the Bradbury, because basically it's historical precedent. It's been done, so what is stopping us doing it again? Nothing at all. And this would, I mean, if you think about it, we will collapse. All the nations in the world, if we went back to the Bradbury Pound, if we went back to creating our own money based on the wealth of the nation, the credit of the nation, and everyone would be, you know, interest-free, or you'd have no students in debt, you'd have the NHS looked after, schools looked after, our defence forces no longer wound down. You know, everywhere you look, we'll be a happy nation again. We'll be industrious, we'll put money aside for infrastructure projects, we put money aside to get people working in small businesses and getting things running. I mean, it's to me, it's common sense. There's absolutely no way you can stand against the principle of the Bradbury Pound, or indeed the greenback dollar, except of course the bankers do not want it. Now, how long have I got left? I'm conscious, I'm rabbiting. 5 minutes, excellent, thank you. Now, we as I said, the big campaign starts next year. Now, if you notice, I mentioned a thing called the carousel. Now, this is an article I'm writing at the moment. It's called The Bankers, Bradburys and the Carousel of Corporate Enslavement. And again, what I'm trying to highlight, imagine a carousel floating in space. And the more debt there is, the faster that carousel starts to go round and round. On the outside, where the centrifugal force is at its most, you've got the poor people in the developing countries, the people who have got no future. They're human beings, but they've got nothing. The whole economic system is against them, and they're being flung into debt, and the faster the debt thing goes, they'll get flung off into space. So basically, the developing countries, we know the New World Order has the useless eaters as far as they're concerned, and they want to reduce the population, some say by as many as 80%. I don't know about that figure, but all I know is they have absolutely no empathy at all with people living in developing countries. As far as they're concerned, as I said, they are just useless eaters. As you go in towards the core of the carousel, obviously you have developed countries where the feeling of the centrifugal force is not quite so much, but nonetheless people are increasingly becoming corporate debt slaves. They are working for these big corporations who are taking over left, right and centre. You can see that in our country, and obviously the nearer you go to the centre, you have the bosses of these corporations and the people who are still classed as useful idiots by the people right at the centre of the carousel. And of course, right at the centre of the carousel, we have the bankers, we have the bloodline families, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers and the like. And this is the point I really want to get over tonight, because I'm conscious I'm having to rabbit. We are the 99.999999999% of the population of the world. They account for the 0.000000000. So why are we so bloody scared of them? You know, I mean, when you think about it, logically, they're only a tiny number of these so-and-sos. And really, tomorrow, I mean, this is what's happening. People are waking up, and when we provide them with a peaceful solution, which must involve humour, and this is one thing I'm absolutely passionate about, when we do go to the barricades, and I visualise the barricades should be wheelie bins across the road. And just to upset the councillors, we'll have the wheelie bin lids up a bit. Okay? I mean, whatever we do, when we overthrow these so-and-sos, we must be laughing. Yes. Because as soon as you have bloodshed like the French Revolution, we well, mind you, guillotining Blair. No? Sorry, fantasy time. But no, we really have got to do it with good humour. We've got to do it quickly. And what I'm envisaging is we're going to have a very British coup. There was a programme done in the 1980s, a drama called The Very British Coup. And we're not going to have tanks on the streets. We're not going to have anything dramatic like that. We're simply going to have ordinary people walking up to the bankers and the politicians and arresting them, taking them down to the police station where we will have. Now, I believe you've had Roger Hayes here and you've had Guy Taylor. They're brilliant. They go into court. I mean, I was with Roger in court, and I heard him stand up to this judge and said, "Sir, are you here under your oath of office?" This guy could not answer. I mean, it was wonderful. We know we are right. We know that they are criminals. Many of them are criminals in the courts and everything else. But we also know that good coppers are waking up, good people in the courts are waking up, and they are going to be on our side. Because they're not going to serve this 0.0001%. They have no interest in, you know, they know that the people, I mean, you know, when you go home, your neighbours are starting to talk, your people down at the golf club, your social club, whatever it is, whatever you are, people are saying, I'm pissed off with what's going on. And if you know you're part of the problem, oh dear, rather like our bailiffs said that, but by the way, when's the video coming out? I want to see the video. Oh, 2 minutes, right, gosh, shut up, right. So, look. There is something else, though, with what's happening on the money supply. And as I said, the campaign for the Bradbury is going to be brilliant next year. It's going to, I mean, the politicians got no way of standing up to this. They really don't know what to say or what to do. And economists, economists, bloody hell. You know, they shut that lot down. Anyway, but there's something else that is creeping up, and this is a darker side that we've got, is the child abuse and the paedophiles who we're starting to expose. Yes, we were exposing, they're obviously after Savile, the entertainers, but the politicians, the judges, we're aiming for that. And there's two things that are going to... There are two things that are going to bring the establishment down, the Bank of England, the City of London, all this, two things. And that is the Bradbury Pound and exposing the child abuse and all the ghastly things they get up to blackmail and do everything else. Look, I'm going to shut up, but thank you for inviting me and enjoy the next couple of years. Thank you. Yes.